The conference room at Fort Bragg smelled like old wood and military polish. February 12, 1991, 1800 hours. Outside North Carolina, winter pressed cold against the windows. Inside, 5 generals sat behind a long mahogany table, their ribbons catching the overhead lights like small metallic rainbows. Lieutenant Kira Ashford stood at attention in the center of the room. 25 years old, 5'6" in boots, blonde hair pulled back so tight it made her temples ache. Her uniform was pressed to knife edges. Her hands didn't shake. They never shook, not even when she was 12 years old, and her father put a rifle in her hands for the first time and told her to shoot the elk at 300 yards. She'd made that shot. She'd made every shot since. General Victor Bradford sat in the center chair. 55 years old, 3 stars on his shoulders, jaw like a granite shelf. He had the kind of face that looked carved rather than born. He was reading from a file. Her file. Lieutenant Ashford, he said without looking up, 4 years in service. Top of your class at basic. Highest marks in marksmanship training in Fort Benning history. Sniper school graduate 1990. 100% accuracy rate across 500 test rounds. He closed the file, looked at her. Impressive numbers. Thank you, sir. Your request to join Operation Desert Storm is denied. The words landed flat. No preamble, no explanation. Just the decision delivered like a weather report. Kira's jaw tightened. She didn't blink. Sir, may I ask why? Bradford leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked. The desert is no place for a woman, Lieutenant. Heat exhaustion, dehydration, physical demands that would break most men. We need soldiers who can handle those conditions. You'd be a liability. Something hot and sharp moved through Kira's chest. Not anger, not yet, something deeper. Something that tasted like every morning she'd woken at 04:30 to run 10 miles. Every night she'd stayed on the range until her hands cramped. Every instructor who'd told her she was too small, too quiet, too female. Sir, my record. Your record is excellent. For an instructor. Bradford's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. We need you here training the next generation. That's where you'll serve your country best. The general to Bradford's left nodded. So did the one on the right. A unanimous verdict delivered before she'd even entered the room. Kira stood perfectly still. Her father had taught her that too. When you can't control the situation, control yourself. Be the quietest thing in the room. The quietest hunter brings home the most game. Is there anything else, sir? Dismissed, Lieutenant. She saluted. Sharp, precise. Turned on her heel and walked to the door. Her boots made no sound on the carpet. She put her hand on the doorknob. Stopped. Sir, Bradford looked up. Irritation flickered across his face. What is it? Someday you'll regret this decision. She didn't wait for a response. Walked out. Closed the door behind her with a soft click that sounded like a period at the end of a sentence. The hallway was empty. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Kira walked toward the exit, her steps measured, her breathing controlled. She could feel the heat behind her eyes, but she wouldn't let it fall. Not here. Not where anyone could see. Outside, the February cold hit her face like a slap. Good. She needed it. Needed something to feel besides the hollow space opening in her chest. Men streamed past her, soldiers heading to briefings, to training, to deployment orders for Desert Storm. Every single one of them heading somewhere that mattered. Every single one of them getting the chance she'd just been denied. Kira walked to the parking lot, got in her truck, a beat-up Ford Ranger that had belonged to her father. It still smelled faintly of gun oil and pine. She sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel, staring through the windshield at nothing. For a moment, just one moment, she let herself remember. Montana, 1978. She was 12 years old. Her father stood beside her on the ridge above their property. Thomas Ashford, Marine Corps, Vietnam, 1968 to 1970. Shoulders like fence posts, hands scarred from 1,000 small repairs, eyes the same pale blue as the Montana sky. He'd handed her the rifle, his rifle, a Remington 700 that he'd carried through rice paddies and jungle heat and firefights that he never talked about except in fragments late at night when he thought she was asleep. See the elk, he'd asked. She'd looked through the scope. 300 yards down the slope, a bull elk stood beside a creek drinking. The crosshairs wobbled. Her hands were too small, her arms too weak to hold the rifle steady. I can't make that shot, Dad. You can. You just have to be quieter than the wind. What does that mean? It means don't fight the rifle, don't fight the wind, don't fight yourself, just breathe. Wait for the stillness between heartbeats. That's when you take the shot. She'd tried, breathed in, breathed out, waited for that space between the thump-thump of her pulse, found it. Squeezed the trigger. The elk had dropped. Her father had smiled. Not a big smile. Thomas Ashford didn't do big smiles, just a small curve at the corner of his mouth and a hand on her shoulder that said more than words ever could. The quietest hunter brings home the most game, he'd told her. Remember that, Kira. It's not about being the loudest or the strongest. It's about being patient, about seeing what others miss, about taking the shot when everyone else is still looking for the target. He died 7 years later. Heart attack while fixing the barn roof. She was 19, already enlisted, already following the path he'd laid out without meaning to. The memory dissolved. Kira was back in the truck in the parking lot in February 1991 with a decision that felt like a door slamming shut on everything she'd worked for. She started the engine, drove to the shooting range on the far edge of the base. The one nobody used after 1,800 hours because the lights were bad and the wind came hard across the open ground. Perfect, she checked out ammunition from the duty officer. 200 rounds, signed her name. Carried the ammo in her rifle case to lane 15, the farthest one from the small building that served as an office. 2,200 hours, full dark now. The temperature had dropped to 38 degrees, wind gusting 15 miles per hour from the northeast. Not ideal conditions for shooting. Kira didn't care. She set up her targets at 300 yards, 400, 500, set up her rifle. M24 sniper weapon system. She knew this gun the way some people knew their own heartbeat. Every scratch on the stock, every faint imperfection in the barrel, the exact amount of pressure needed on the trigger. 4 pounds, 3 ounces. She loaded the first round, looked through the scope. The target was a black circle on a white background, barely visible in the darkness. She couldn't see the wind, but she could feel it, could read it in the way the grass moved at the edges of her vision, could calculate the drop, the drift, the dozens of tiny variables that turned shooting from a skill into an art. She breathed in, breathed out, found the stillness, fired. The recoil pressed into her shoulder like a familiar greeting. She worked the bolt, loaded, fired, again. Again. 100 rounds, 100 targets hit. She didn't miss. She never missed. But hitting targets didn't fix the hollow feeling. Didn't change Bradford's decision. Didn't put her on a transport to the Middle East where something real was happening, where her skills could matter, where she could be more than just an instructor teaching other people to do the job she should be doing. She loaded round 101. Impressive, Kira spun. Her hand went to her sidearm before her brain caught up. A man stood 20 feet behind her, tall, maybe 6'2", old but not fragile, 70 or 75, maybe older. He wore a uniform but no rank insignia she could see in the darkness. His face was weathered like old leather. His eyes caught the faint light from the range building and reflected it back pale gray, sharp as broken glass. "Easy, Lieutenant," he said. His voice was gravel and smoke. "I'm not the enemy." Kira's hand stayed on her weapon. "This range is closed, sir. Whoever you are." "Colonel Wyatt Brennan." He took a step closer. Not threatening, just closer. "And I've been watching you shoot for 30 minutes. 100 rounds, 100 hits, in the dark, in wind, at ranges that would make most snipers break down and cry by 'em." He paused. "Why are you out here, Lieutenant Ashford? How do you know my name? I make it my business to know the best shooters on this base. And you're the best, by a considerable margin." He moved to the shooting bench, sat down on it like he had all the time in the world. "So I'll ask again. Why are you out here at 2,200 hours shooting like you're training to kill something that can't die?" Kira lowered her hand from her sidearm. This man, this Colonel Brennan, didn't feel like a threat, didn't feel like command structure. Felt like something else, something older and harder and sadder. "I needed to shoot, because Bradford turned you down." It wasn't a question. Kira felt something tighten in her chest. "You know about that? I know about everything that happens on this base that matters. And you matter, Lieutenant, whether Bradford sees it or not." Brennan leaned forward at elbows on his knees. "I've seen 500 snipers in my life, trained with them, fought beside them, buried some of them, your top 3, maybe top 1. That doesn't seem to count for much. Not with men like Bradford. He sees the uniform before he sees the soldier, sees the gender before he sees the skill." Brennan's voice dropped. "I don't." Kira studied him, really looked. The uniform was old style, the kind officers wore in the 70s, 80s. His hands were scarred, not from desk work, from something harder, something that left permanent marks. "Who are you, sir, really?" Someone who knows what it's like to be told you can't do something because of who you are instead of what you can do. He stood. Walk with me, Lieutenant. There's something you need to see. Every instinct told Kira to say no, to stay on the range, to keep shooting until the hollow feeling went away or until she ran out of ammunition, whichever came first. But something in Brennan's voice pulled at her. Not authority, something deeper. Something that sounded like understanding. She cleared her rifle, packed her gear, followed. They walked across the base. Not toward the main buildings, toward a section Kira had never been to. Older structures, brick buildings that looked like they'd been standing since World War II. Brennan led her to one that had no windows, just a single metal door with a keypad lock. He punched in a code. The lock clicked. The door opened. Inside was a room that didn't exist on any map of Fort Bragg. The walls were covered in tactical maps. Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. Red pins marked enemy positions. Blue pins marked coalition forces. A large table dominated the center of the room, covered in satellite photos and intelligence reports. Radio equipment lined one wall, dark and silent. Brennan closed the door behind them, locked it. "What is this place?" Kira asked. "Somewhere we can talk without being overheard." He moved to the table, picked up a report, handed it to her. "Read this." Kira took the document. Classified. Top secret. She shouldn't be seeing this. But Brennan was watching her with those gray eyes that had seen too much and expected her to understand. She read, "Shadow Recon, 8-man team, deep penetration mission into Iraqi territory. Objective extract. Dr. Rashid Al-Takriti, chemical weapons scientist defector. Mission compromised. Team pinned down 45 miles behind enemy lines. Surrounded by Republican Guard forces. Estimated hostile count 200 plus. Available ammunition. Critical. QRF unable to reach due to SAM coverage. Casualty projection 100%. Kira looked up. When did this happen? 18 hours ago. They're still out there, still alive, for now. Brennan pointed to a spot on the map, a red circle with blue marker in the center. They activated their emergency beacons 6 hours ago. We can track them. We can see them dying in real time through satellite thermal imaging. But we can't reach them. Why not Iraqi air defense? They've got SS-6 missile systems blanketing that entire sector. Any helicopter we send gets shot down. Any airstrike gets intercepted. We're watching 8 Americans die, and there's not a damn thing the United States military can officially do about it. The word hung in the air between them. Officially. Kira felt her pulse pick up. What are you suggesting, sir? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you a fact. Shadow Recon needs help. The kind of help that can't come from a platoon or a company or an airstrike. They need one person. Small, invisible. Someone who can get through Iraqi lines without being detected. Someone who can provide overwatch from a position they're not expecting. Someone who can even the odds long enough for Shadow Recon to survive until QRF can reach them. Kira stared at the map, at the red pins surrounding the blue ones, at the impossible mathematics of 8 men against 200. You want me to go in alone? I'm offering you the chance. If you take it, Brennan's voice was quiet. It's completely off the books. No authorization, no backup, no extraction plan if things go wrong. If you die out there, I can't even bring your body home. You'll just be listed as missing, presumed dead, and I'll be court-martialed for sending you. Why would you risk that? Brennan was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with years. I had a son, Captain Daniel Brennan, Marine Corps. He died in Beirut in 1983. Barracks bombing, 241 Marines killed because someone in command decided they didn't need better security, didn't need overwatch, didn't need the precautions that might have saved them. He looked at Kira. His eyes were wet. My son died because men in comfortable offices made decisions based on what looked good on paper instead of what kept soldiers alive. I won't let that happen again. Not if I can help it. Kira understood. This wasn't about following orders or military protocol. This was about a father who'd lost his son trying to save someone else's sons. If I do this, she said slowly, and Bradford finds out, he will find out, eventually, and when he does, my career is over. But I've had 45 years. I can afford to lose what's left. Brennan stepped closer. The question is whether you can afford to say no. Can you stand on this base training other shooters knowing 8 men died because you had the skill to save them, but didn't have the opportunity? It was a manipulation, Kira knew that. A carefully constructed argument designed to push her toward a decision that could end both their careers. But it was also the truth. She looked at the map again, at the terrain, the distances, the positions, started calculating angles, wind patterns, concealment options. Her mind was already working the problem before she consciously decided to take it. What's the timeline? Brennan allowed himself a small smile. There's a stealth helicopter leaving at 0100 hours. It'll drop you 6 miles from Shadow Recon's position. You'll have to cover the distance on foot. Terrain is rough, desert stone like the surface of the moon. But there's concealment if you know where to look. Equipment. M24 with custom scope, 100 rounds. Tier 1 medical kit. Encrypted radio linked directly to me. Maps. Water. 40 pounds total. He paused. Shadow Recon doesn't know you're coming. They don't know you exist. You're a ghost lieutenant. You save them and then you disappear. No contact, no recognition, no glory. Just the knowledge that 8 men go home to their families instead of going home in boxes. Kira thought about her father, about the elk at 300 yards, about being the quietest hunter, about taking the shot when everyone else was still looking for the target. If I do this, I'm not doing it to prove Bradford wrong. Then why? Because 8 people are dying. She met Brennan's eyes, and I can stop it. Brennan nodded slowly. That's the right answer, Lieutenant. The only answer that matters. He checked his watch. You have 3 hours. Get some rest. Eat something. I'll have the equipment ready at the helicopter pad at 0045. Kira didn't move. Colonel, there's something I need to know. What's that? If this goes wrong, if I die out there, will you tell my father what happened? She paused. I know he's gone, but will you go to Montana and tell him anyway? Tell him I didn't waste the skills he gave me. Brennan's expression softened, just slightly, just enough to show the man beneath the officer. I'll tell him, Lieutenant. I promise you that. Then I'm in. They shook hands. Brennan's grip was firm, steady, the grip of a man who'd made promises before and kept them. Kira left the building, walked back to her quarters. The base was quiet now. Most of the lights were off. She could see stars overhead, hard and bright in the winter sky. She didn't sleep, didn't try to. Instead, she sat on her bunk and cleaned her rifle, checked every part, every screw, every mechanism, made sure everything was perfect. Because out there in the desert, perfection was the difference between 8 men living and 8 men dying. At 0030 hours, she gathered her gear, walked to the helicopter pad on the far edge of the base. The area was dark, isolated, surrounded by chain link fence with posted signs that said authorized personnel only. Brennan was waiting. So was the helicopter, a modified Black Hawk painted dark gray, no markings. The pilot sat in the cockpit, face hidden behind a helmet and visor. He didn't look at Kira, didn't acknowledge her presence. Brennan handed her a gear bag. Everything you need. Radio frequency is programmed. Call sign is Phantom. My call sign is Hawk. Phantom, Kira repeated. Because I'm a ghost. Because you're going to haunt them. Brennan put a hand on her shoulder. His grip was tight, almost desperate. Listen to me, Lieutenant. You're going into a situation where you'll be outnumbered, outgunned, and completely alone. The only advantages you have are skill and invisibility. Don't waste either one. Take your shots, make them count. And when Shadow Recon is safe, you get out. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to make contact. Just disappear. Understood. Understood, sir. One more thing. His grip tightened slightly. You come back, Kira. That's not a request. That's an order. You finish this mission and you come back alive. Because I'm not burying another soldier if I can help it. Something in his voice made Kira's throat tight. This wasn't just about the mission. This was about Daniel Brennan, about the son who died in Beirut, about a father trying to save someone else's child because he couldn't save his own. Yes, sir, I'll come back. She climbed into the helicopter. The door closed. The rotors spun up louder and louder until the sound filled the world. The aircraft lifted, tilted, headed east into darkness. Kira looked through the window, saw Fort Bragg falling away below, saw Brennan standing alone on the pad, a small figure getting smaller until he was just a dot and then nothing. She was alone now, completely alone, flying toward a war zone with no backup, no authorization, no safety net, just her rifle and her skills and the memory of her father's voice saying the quietest hunter brings home the most game. The helicopter flew for 3 hours, low, fast, staying under radar. The pilot didn't speak, didn't even look back. He was just a pair of hands on the controls flying a mission that officially wasn't happening. At 0345, the helicopter descended. Iraqi desert below now, dark and empty. The pilot set down just long enough for Kira to jump out with her gear. Then the helicopter lifted again, disappeared into the night. The sound of the rotors faded. Silence. Complete silence. Just the wind across the sand and stone. Kira activated her radio. Brennan's voice came through faint with distance and encryption. Phantom, this is Hawk. Confirm insertion. Confirmed, I'm on the ground. Shadow Recon is 6 miles northeast. Follow the terrain, stay low. Iraqi patrols are active in this sector. Copy that. Phantom, yes sir. Good hunting. The radio went silent. Kira was alone. She checked her compass. Northeast, started walking. The terrain was exactly as Brennan had described. Stone and sand, no vegetation. No cover except the rocks themselves. The moon was a thin crescent, giving just enough light to see by, but not enough to be seen. She'd covered 2 miles when the radio crackled again. Not Brennan's voice this time, a different voice. Younger, desperate, broadcast on an emergency frequency. Any station, this is Shadow Recon. We are under heavy fire, surrounded on 3 sides. Ammunition critical, request immediate assistance. Repeat, request immediate assistance. A pause. Then the same voice, quieter now. Resigned. 20 rounds left. That's all we have. Kira stopped. The words hit her like a physical force. 20 rounds, 8 men, 200 enemies. Brennan's voice cut in on the encrypted channel. Phantom, did you copy that transmission? I copied. They're dying, Kira. You need to move. Now. Kira looked at the terrain ahead. 4 miles to go. Rough ground, uphill in places, with 40 pounds of gear. She started running, not a sprint. A measured pace she could maintain. Breathing controlled. Rifle secured across her back. Eyes scanning for obstacles, for threats, for the fastest path through the stone. Her father had taught her to run like this. Long distances, heavy pack, Montana mountains. He'd said a Marine never walks when someone needs help. You run until your lungs burn and your legs scream and your vision blurs, and then you run some more. She ran, the desert flowed past. Stone gave way to pin, gave way to stone. Her boots found purchase on ground that should have been impossible to cross at speed. Her breathing fell into rhythm, in, out, like her heartbeat, like the squeeze of a trigger. 3 miles, her legs were burning. 2 miles, her lungs felt like they were on fire. 1 mile, her vision was starting to narrow. She didn't slow down. At 0540, she reached a ridge, dropped to her stomach, crawled the last 10 feet, looked down. The scope brought the world close. 900 meters below, she saw them. 8 figures in desert camouflage, pinned in a depression no bigger than a living room, surrounded on 3 sides by muzzle flashes and the dark shapes of men moving to kill them. Kira's breath caught. They were so young, faces streaked with dirt and fear. One was slumped against a rock, unconscious. Another was working on him with shaking hands. A woman, the medic, her blonde hair dark with blood and dust. The others were firing, controlled bursts, conserving ammunition, professional even in the face of death. These were the 8 people she'd run 4 miles to save. Real people. Not names on a briefing file, not tactical problems to solve. People with families, with futures that would end in the next 5 minutes if she didn't act. Kira felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't about proving Bradford wrong anymore. Wasn't even about following Brennan's orders. This was about 8 human beings who deserved to go home. She chambered around. The metallic click was loud in her ears. She settled into position. Calculated wind, distance, elevation, temperature, all the variables that separated a shot from a kill. Through the scope, she saw an Iraqi officer. He was standing, shouting orders, directing the assault. Take him out and the attack would falter. Just for a moment, just long enough. She found the stillness between heartbeats, took the shot. The rifle kicked, the officer dropped. Instant, clean. No time to scream. The Iraqi forces froze, confused, looking for the source of the shot they hadn't expected. Kira was already working the bolt, loading the next round bin, finding the next target. The heavy machine gunner setting up on a ridge. She put a bullet through his chest. He fell backward, the gun tumbling with him. Below in the depression, one of the Americans was looking around, trying to figure out what was happening. His voice came through on the radio. Who the hell is shooting? We got support. Another voice, older, calmer. I don't know, but don't ask questions. Just use it. Kira fired again. Again. Methodical. Precise. each shot carefully chosen, each target selected for maximum disruption, not random killing, surgical removal of the enemy's command structure, their support weapons, their coordination. 7 shots, 7 bodies. The Iraqi assault began to crumble. Men who'd been advancing started falling back, looking for cover, trying to figure out where death was coming from. The radio crackled. Brennan's voice. "Phantom, I'm tracking you on thermal. Well done. But this is just the beginning. They're calling in armor. What kind of T-72 tanks? 3 of them. ETA 10 minutes. Kira lowered her rifle, looked at the terrain, at the distances, at the mathematics of what she was about to try. You couldn't kill a tank with a rifle. Not directly. But you could kill the tank commander. And a tank without a commander was just 40 tons of metal driving blind. She settled into wait. Below, Shadow Recon was using the respite, moving their wounded to better cover, redistributing ammunition. She could hear their voices on the radio, confused, grateful, wondering who their guardian angel was. They'd never know. Kira Ashford was a ghost, a phantom, a hunter so quiet they'd never even see her coming, and she'd just started hunting. The dawn came slow to the Iraqi desert. First, just a lightening of the eastern sky from black to deep purple, then gray bleeding into gold. The heat would follow soon. Already Kira could feel the temperature rising. It had been 45 degrees when she'd taken position. Now it was pushing 60. By noon, it would be 110. She'd been shooting for 47 minutes. 12 shots fired, 12 bodies on the ground. The Iraqi assault had staggered, broken apart, reformed into smaller units, taking cover behind rocks and disabled vehicles. They were still out there, still dangerous, but the coordinated attack had become something more cautious, more afraid. They knew someone was hunting them. They just didn't know who or from where. Kira worked the bolt, chambered round 13, scanned through her scope. The magnification brought the world close. Too close sometimes. She could see faces now in the growing light, young faces, scared faces. Men who'd woken up this morning not knowing they'd be dead before breakfast. She pushed the thought away, didn't let herself think of them as people. They were targets, threats, problems to be solved with mathematics and ballistics. A spotter emerged from behind a boulder. Iraqi army. He was scanning the ridges with binoculars, searching for her. He was good, methodical, starting from the south and working north. In another 30 seconds, he'd be looking directly at her position. Kira adjusted for wind. The breeze had shifted, now coming from the east at 12 miles per hour. She compensated, held her breath, squeezed. The spotter dropped. The binoculars clattered on stone. 13. Her radio crackled. Not Brennan this time. The Shadow Recon frequency. One of them was transmitting, a voice roughened by dust and exhaustion. "Whoever you are, wherever you are, thank you. We were dead. You gave us a chance." The voice belonged to the team leader, Staff Sergeant Garrett Kane, 34 years old according to the briefing file Brennan had shown her. 12 years in service, wife and 2 kids in Kentucky. He'd been 2 minutes from dying when Kira had taken her first shot. She didn't respond. Couldn't. Ghosts don't talk. Another voice came through, younger, more shaken. "Sarge, who is that? Who's helping us?" "Don't know, Levi. Don't care. Just stay down and let them work." Kira shifted position, moved 15 feet to the east, found a new hide between different rocks. Professional snipers never fired more than 3 shots from the same position. After 3, someone smart would have triangulated your location. She'd already fired 5 from her last spot. Time to move. The new position gave her a different angle. She could see more of the depression where Shadow Recon was pinned, could see the wounded man clearly now. Private Colt Mitchell, 22 years old, shrapnel wound to the abdomen. The team medic had bandaged it, but blood was seeping through. Without real medical attention, soon he'd die. Maybe not today, but infection would take him in 2 days. 3 at most. The medic was Corporal Adeline Hartwell, 29, blonde hair dark with sweat and dust. Kira watched her work. Efficient, focused, checking vitals, adjusting tourniquets, rationing their limited medical supplies. She'd kept Mitchell alive this long through sheer competence and will. Kira made a mental note. When this was over, if she made contact, she'd give Hartwell the Tier 1 medical kit, the one with the real coagulants and antibiotics, the kind that could buy Mitchell another 72 hours. Maybe long enough for a real medevac, if any of them lived that long. The rumble reached her before she saw them. Deep, mechanical. The sound of heavy engines grinding over rough terrain. Kira looked south through her scope. Three dark shapes moving up the valley road. Tanks. T-72 main battle tanks. Soviet-made. Iraqi Republican Guard. 41 tons of armor and firepower. Each one carried a 125mm smoothbore cannon that could punch through reinforced concrete. The machine guns mounted on top could sweep an area clean of infantry in seconds. Shadow Recon had nothing that could stop them. Their heaviest weapon was a light machine gun. Might as well throw rocks. Kira's radio crackled. Brennan's voice. Tense now. Phantom, I'm seeing armor on approach. 3 T-72s. You need to abort. Extract to secondary position. I'll call in an airstrike. Negative? Kira's voice was calm. Airstrikes take 30 minutes minimum. Shadow Recon doesn't have 30 minutes. Lieutenant, you cannot engage armor with a rifle. That's suicide. I'm not engaging the armor, sir. I'm engaging the commanders. Silence on the radio, then Brennan's voice quieter. You're going to shoot tank commanders from 900 meters while they're moving. Yes, sir. That's impossible. Watch me. She cut the transmission. Focused on the tanks. They were moving in a column. The lead tank's commander stood in the turret hatch. Standard procedure for movement. You couldn't see anything from inside a closed tank except what the limited periscopes showed you. Commanders rode with hatches open for better situational awareness. It was also the only way to kill them. Kira tracked the lead tank. It was moving at maybe 15 miles per hour, bouncing over uneven ground. The commander was partially protected by the hatch rim, but his head and shoulders were exposed. She calculated. Distance 100 yards in closing. Wind east-northeast at 14 miles per hour. Target velocity 22 feet per second, lateral movement. The tank would cover about 66 feet in the 3 seconds between her pulling the trigger and the bullet arriving. She had to aim where he was going to be, not where he was. Her father had taught her to shoot birds in flight when she was 14. Ducks, mostly. Fast-moving targets that jinked and turned. He'd told her the secret wasn't following the bird with your barrel. It was seeing the path the bird would take and putting the bullet on that path. Leading the target. Same principle. Different scale. The lead tank rolled over a flat section of ground. The commander steadied. For just a moment, his movement became predictable. Straight line, constant speed. Kira led him by 8 feet. Held. Fired. The bullet flew for 2.3 seconds. Crossed 100 yards. Dropped 47 inches from bore axis. Drifted 18 inches right from the wind. Hit the commander in the upper chest. He jerked. Slumped forward across the hatch rim, arms dangling inside the turret. The tank kept moving, but slower now. Confused. The crew inside couldn't see. Didn't know what had happened. The tank veered left. Stopped. Kira was already tracking the second tank. Its commander had seen the first tank stop, was looking toward it, trying to figure out what had happened. He hadn't connected the dots yet, didn't understand that someone was shooting from over 1,000 yards away. She made the same calculation. Led the target. Fired. The second commander dropped. The third tank commander understood. He ducked, pulled himself down into the turret, started to close the hatch. Kira fired before he could seal it. The bullet caught him in the shoulder. Not a kill shot, but enough. He fell into the tank, blood splashing on the hatch rim. Someone inside pulled him down, slammed the hatch closed. The third tank was sealed now, immune to rifle fire, but also blind. The commander was wounded. The crew inside couldn't see except through limited periscopes. The tank turned in a slow circle. Lost. Dangerous but directionless. It turned too far. The driver overcorrected. The tank struck a boulder. The impact threw the treads out of alignment. The tank lurched. Tried to move forward. One tread spinning, the other locked. It pivoted hard right, slammed into the side of Tank 1. Both tanks were now disabled. Crews trapped inside. Hatches sealed. Not destroyed, but neutralized. Kira heard voices on the Shadow Recon frequency. Disbelief. Did she just take out 3 tanks with a rifle? She hit moving targets at over 1,000 yards. 3 for 3. Who the hell is she? The voice that answered was older, calmer. Sergeant Donovan Sterling, 32 years old. Machine gunner. His voice carried a note Kira recognized. Not quite fear, not quite awe. Something between them. I don't know who she is, but I've been shooting for 15 years, and I couldn't make those shots on a range in perfect conditions. She's doing it in wind at distance on moving targets. He paused. We're watching something impossible happen. Kira didn't feel impossible. She felt focused, clear. This was what her father had trained her for. This was why she'd spent 10,000 hours on shooting ranges, why she'd practiced in rain and snow and darkness and heat, so that when it mattered, when lives depended on it, her body would know what to do without her mind getting in the way. She reloaded, scanned for new targets. The Iraqi forces were confused now, scattered. They'd come expecting an easy kill, 8 Americans with no ammunition and no support. Instead, they'd lost 15 men and 3 tanks to an enemy they couldn't see. The sun was fully up now, temperature pushing 80 degrees. The heat shimmer was starting, that visible distortion of air that made long-range shooting even harder, like trying to aim through water. Kira adjusted. She'd trained for this too. Heat shimmer was predictable. It bent light in consistent ways. You just had to account for it. Aim slightly higher, compensate for the false image. She was lining up her next shot when the radio crackled. Different frequency this time. Iraqi military communication. She shouldn't have been able to hear it, but Brennan's encrypted radio had scanning capability. It picked up nearby transmissions automatically. A voice speaking in Arabic. She didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. Urgent, requesting something. Then Brennan's voice on her frequency. Translated. Phantom, they just called in a counter sniper. Someone who knows what they're doing. He's been tracking your muzzle flash. He knows your general area. How long until he's in position? He's already in position. He's been in position for 10 minutes, waiting for you to fire again so he can pinpoint you exactly. Kira went very still. Somewhere out there, another shooter was looking for her. Waiting, patient, exactly what she'd do if the situations were reversed. She scanned the terrain, looking for likely positions. High ground, clear sight lines, good concealment. There were a dozen possibilities, maybe more. Hawk, can you give me his location? Negative. Satellite can't get resolution through this heat. And he's good, Phantom. Very good. Former Soviet trained. Probably has more experience than you do. Wonderful. You need to relocate now before he finds you. Kira knew Brennan was right, but relocating meant losing her current position, meant giving up her sight lines on Shadow Recon, meant leaving them exposed while she moved. She looked through her scope. The Iraqis were regrouping, starting to coordinate again. They'd figured out the tanks were neutralized, were adapting, preparing for another assault. If she moved now, Shadow Recon would be overrun in minutes. If she stayed, the counter sniper would kill her. Neither option was acceptable, so she'd create a third option. Kira reached into her pack, pulled out her water bottle, 3/4 full. She unscrewed the cap, poured half the water onto the ground behind her position, created a small puddle that caught the sunlight, reflected it. Then she moved, fast, low, 30 yards to the south, found a new position with a clear view of her old spot, set up her rifle, aimed at the space where a counter sniper would be looking if he was tracking the water reflection. She waited. 30 seconds. 60. 90. Then she saw it. A muzzle flash from a ridge 800 yards southeast. The counter sniper had taken the bait, fired at the reflection, thinking it was her scope glinting. His bullet struck stone right where she'd been 2 minutes ago. Kira adjusted her aim, found him through her scope. He was good, already moving, relocating after his shot just like she would, but for 1 second, one brief moment, he was exposed as he shifted positions. She fired. The bullet crossed 800 yards in under 2 seconds, hit the counter sniper in the upper chest. He fell, tumbled down the rocky slope, came to rest in a position that would have been uncomfortable if he'd still been alive to feel it. But his last shot had been close, very close. Kira could see the impact point, 6 inches from where her head had been. If she'd stayed in her original position, if she hadn't moved, she'd be dead right now. The radio erupted. Shadow Recon frequency. Did you see that? She just won a sniper duel against a guy who was trying to kill her while defending us. Who is this person? Kira's shoulder burned. She looked down. The counter sniper's bullet hadn't missed after all. It had grazed her, cut through the fabric of her uniform, drawn a line of red across her left shoulder. Not deep, not dangerous, but it hurt like fire. She pulled out her medical kit, found antiseptic, bandages, gritted her teeth and cleaned the wound, wrapped it tight. The pain sharpened her focus, made everything clearer, more real. Blood was seeping through the bandage. Not much, but enough that it would leave traces. DNA, evidence that someone had been here. She didn't care. Evidence didn't matter if Shadow Recon died. Nearly an hour of shooting, an hour of holding position. Her body was starting to rebel, muscles cramping, vision blurring at the edges. But she couldn't stop, not yet. Her radio crackled. Brennan's voice, different now, worried. Phantom, I saw that hit on thermal. Report your status. Grazed, still operational. Lieutenant, you're bleeding. You need to pull back. Let me call in support. Support takes too long. I'm finishing this. Kira, I said I'm finishing this, sir. She cut the transmission. Focused on the battlefield. The Iraqis were preparing for another assault. They'd learned from the first one. We're moving more carefully now, using the terrain, coordinating in smaller groups. Smart, adaptable. Exactly what made them dangerous. Kira selected targets, not randomly, strategically. She aimed for the leaders, the ones organizing the others, the ones holding the assault together. Shot, reload, scan, shot, reload, scan. The rhythm became automatic, mechanical. Her hands knew what to do without conscious thought. Chamber round, acquire target, compensate for wind and distance in heat shimmer, find stillness, fire. 18, 19, 20, each shot carefully chosen, each one designed to break the enemy's cohesion, to make them afraid. To turn an organized military unit into a collection of individuals who just wanted to survive. It was working. The assault was fragmenting. Men who'd been advancing were now staying in cover, waiting for someone else to move first, waiting for someone else to die. Through her scope, Kira saw an Iraqi lieutenant trying to rally his men, shouting, waving them forward, trying to restore order through force of personality. She put a bullet through his radio, not through him. Through the radio on his belt, the equipment exploded in a shower of plastic and sparks. The lieutenant dove for cover. His men scattered. The rally broke apart. 21 shots fired, 20 kills, 1 destroyed radio. The sun was high now, temperature over 90 degrees. Sweat ran down Kira's face, stung her eyes, her shoulder throbbed. Her hands were steady, but her arms were starting to shake from holding the rifle in position for so long. She drank water, not much, just enough to keep functioning. Checked her ammunition, 63 rounds remaining, more than enough. The radio crackled, shadow recon frequency, a new voice this time, younger, scared. Specialist Levi Cross, 20 years old, first deployment. Grenade in the hole. The sound of the explosion rolled across the desert like distant thunder. Kira swung her scope towards Shadow Recon's position, saw smoke, saw movement, saw Corporal Hartwell moving. Wrong, she was moving wrong. The grenade had landed near Mitchell. Hartwell had seen it, had thrown herself over him, taken the blast meant for both of them. Through her scope, Kira could see the damage. Hartwell's left leg was torn, shrapnel wounds below the knee, her right arm was bleeding. Multiple cuts, deep ones, but she was conscious, alert, still giving orders even as her own blood pooled beneath her. Other members of Shadow Recon rushed to help, applied tourniquets, tried to stop the bleeding. Hartwell's face was white with shock, but her voice on the radio was steady. Mitchell's okay, I got most of it, just tie me off and keep fighting. Kira felt something crack in her chest, a feeling she couldn't name, wasn't trained for. Hartwell didn't know Kira existed, would never know, but she'd just done what Kira was doing, put someone else's life ahead of her own, made the calculation that one life in exchange for another was a trade worth making. The difference was Hartwell would be recognized, would get a medal, would have people know what she'd done. Kira would disappear, would be forgotten, would never exist in any official record. And she was fine with that, because this wasn't about recognition. It was about 8 people going home instead of going home in body bags. She found the grenade thrower. He was reloading, preparing to throw another. Kira put him down with a shot that took him in the center of mass. He dropped. The grenade fell from his hand, rolled behind his own cover, detonated. The explosion scattered his fire team. They broke, ran, abandoned their position. 22 kills. The Iraqi assault was breaking apart completely now. What had been a coordinated attack had become chaos. Men were pulling back, calling for orders, getting no response because all their commanders were dead. Kira scanned the battlefield, counted remaining hostiles, maybe 20 still combat effective. Another 15 wounded or hiding. The rest were dead or running. Shadow Recon had started this fight facing 200-to-1 odds. Now it was 20-to-8, almost even. Her radio crackled. Brennan's voice, urgent now. Phantom QRF is wheels up. 2 Blackhawks, ETA 15 minutes. They need a clear Baj LZ. The depression where Shadow Recon is pinned, that's your LZ. Negative. Satellite shows Iraqi observation posts on the South Ridge. They have direct line of sight to that LZ. Helicopters will be sitting ducks on approach. Kira swung her scope south, scanned the ridge. Brennan was right. She could see them now. 4 men, setting up a position. One had what looked like an RPG-7, rocket-propelled grenade launcher. One shot from that could turn a Black Hawk into a fireball. How long until they're in position? They're already in position, Phantom. They're just waiting for the helicopters to commit to approach. Kira did the math. The observation post was 650 yards from her position. Not an impossible shot, but not easy either. 4 targets. She'd have to take them fast, before they could react, before they could radio for help. And she'd have to do it with a wounded shoulder that was starting to stiffen, with arms that had been holding a rifle for over an hour, with eyes that were starting to blur from heat and exhaustion. Hawk, tell the helicopters to hold at current position. Give me 2 minutes. What are you planning by clearing the LZ? She shifted position one more time, found a spot with a clear sight line to the observation post, steadied her rifle, controlled her breathing, ignored the pain in her shoulder. Target 1, the RPG gunner. He was the priority. Take him out first, and the others were just men with rifles. She aimed, compensated for wind, for distance, for the fact that her hands were shaking slightly from fatigue. Found the stillness between heartbeats. Fired. The RPG gunner dropped. The launcher clattered on stone, rolled, teetered on the edge of the ridge, fell. Target 2, the spotter. He was turning, trying to figure out where the shot came from. Kira fired before he could find cover. 2 down, the remaining 2 scattered. 1 went left, 1 went right. Smart. Making themselves harder to target, making her choose. She chose left. Fired, miss. The bullet sparked off rock inches from the target's head. He dove behind a boulder. Kira cursed. Adjusted. The target on the right was moving, running, trying to reach better cover. She tracked him, led him, fired. He stumbled, fell, didn't get up. 3 down, 1 remaining. The last man was good. He'd gone to ground behind solid cover. Wasn't moving, wasn't exposing himself. Just waiting. Hoping she'd give up. Hoping the helicopters would come anyway and he'd get his shot. Kira couldn't afford to wait. QRF was inbound. Shadow Recon needed extraction now. Hartwell needed a hospital now. Every second counted. She scanned the area around the last target's position, looking for an angle, a reflection, anything that would tell her exactly where he was. There. A shadow. Wrong shape. Wrong angle. He was pressed against the back of a boulder, hiding. But the morning sun was creating a shadow that betrayed his exact position. Kira aimed at the shadow, calculated the angle. The bullet would have to pass within inches of the boulder's edge. Any variation and it would hit stone instead of flesh. She steadied, fired. The shadow moved, jerked, fell. 4 down. Hawk LZ is clear. Send them in. Brennan's voice came back immediately. QRF is inbound. 2 minutes. Kira lowered her rifle. Her shoulder was screaming now. Her vision was starting to tunnel. Adrenaline crash, dehydration, blood loss, all catching up at once. She drank the rest of her water. It was warm, tasted like plastic, but it helped. Cleared her head slightly. Through her scope, she watched Shadow Recon. They'd heard the radio transmission. Knew help was coming, were preparing, gathering their wounded, securing their gear, getting ready to move. Hartwell was on a stretcher now, pale subconscious, her left leg elevated, her right arm immobilized. Someone had given her morphine, but her eyes were clear, focused, still the medic even in her condition. Mitchell was beside her, still unconscious but breathing, stable enough to move. The sound of helicopter rotors reached them, distant at first, then louder, growing. 2 Black Hawks appeared from the east, flying low, fast, combat approach. The door gunners had their weapons ready, scanning for threats. Kira kept her scope on the battlefield, watching for any last-minute resistance, any final attempt to stop the extraction. The Iraqis were done, broken. The ones who could move were moving away, retreating south, leaving their dead behind, leaving their wounded behind, just running. The helicopters flared, dropped into the depression, rotors blasting sand and dust into a brown cloud. The crew chiefs jumped out, started loading wounded. Kira watched Hartwell being carried to the helicopter, watched Mitchell being loaded, watched the rest of Shadow Recon boarding. 7 men and 1 woman who'd been minutes from death, now climbing into aircraft that would take them home. Her radio crackled. Brennan's voice. Phantom helicopters are on the ground. You need to extract. Get to the LZ. We'll pick you up. Kira looked at her position, looked at the distance to the LZ, maybe 1,000 yards. Downhill. Through terrain she'd have to cross in the open, where anyone still watching could see her, where Shadow Recon would see her. She'd promised to be a ghost. Ghosts don't show themselves. Negative Hawk, I'm staying dark. Lieutenant, that's an order. Get to the LZ. Sorry, sir, can't hear you. Bad signal. She turned off the radio. Watched through her scope as the helicopters lifted. Rotors beating the air. Rising. Tilting. Heading west towards safety. Toward home. Shadow Recon was safe. All 8 of them. Alive because one person with one rifle had decided that was more important than regulations or recognition or career. Kira sat back, let the rifle rest. Her shoulder was on fire. Her hands were cramping. Her eyes hurt. But she'd done it. Completed the mission. Kept her promise to Brennan. Kept the promise she'd made to herself. The sun was high now, temperature over 100 degrees. The desert was silent except for the wind. The Iraqi dead lay where they'd fallen. 26 bodies, maybe more she couldn't see. All killed by someone they never saw, never heard, never had a chance against. The quietest hunter brings home the most game. Her father would have been proud. Kira packed her rifle, secured her gear, started the long walk back to the extraction point where Brennan's helicopter would pick her up. 6 miles through enemy territory. Wounded, exhausted, alone, but alive. And so were 8 other people because of it. That was enough. That was more than enough. She disappeared into the desert heat, just another shadow among shadows. A ghost that had never been there at all. Hashtag part 3, the legacy revised. Kira made it 2 miles before her legs stopped working properly. The adrenaline had burned away. What remained was just a body that had been pushed past its limits. Dehydration, blood loss, exhaustion. The combination hit her like a physical wall. She stumbled, caught herself on a rock, stood there breathing hard in the desert heat. 108 degrees now. The sun directly overhead. No shade anywhere. Just stone and sand and heat shimmer that made the horizon waver like water. Her radio crackled. She turned it back on after the helicopters had cleared the area. Brennan's voice came through, tight with worry. Phantom, give me your position. Kira checked her compass. Her hands were shaking. 4 miles from extraction point, moving slow. How slow? Very slow, sir. A pause, then Brennan's voice different now. The colonel giving way to something more human. More afraid. Kira, I'm tracking your thermal signature. You're barely moving. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, just tired. You're wounded. I saw the hit. How bad is it? Kira looked at her shoulder. The bandage was soaked through, dark red. The blood had run down her arm, dripped from her fingertips. Left a trail across the desert that any tracker could follow. Not bad. I can make it. You're lying. Stay where you are. I'm sending extraction to you. Negative. Too exposed. Iraqi patrols are still active in this sector. A helicopter landing here would draw attention. I don't care about attention. I care about getting you out alive. Kira smiled. It hurt. Everything hurt. But she smiled anyway because Brennan sounded exactly like her father had sounded that day she'd shot the elk. Proud but worried. Impressed but protective. 4 miles, sir. I can walk 4 miles. You could walk 4 miles 12 hours ago. Right now, you can barely stand. He was right. Kira knew he was right. But admitting it felt like failure. Like all those generals who'd said women couldn't handle the desert had been correct. Like Bradford's decision had been justified. She pushed away from the rock. Took a step. Another. Her legs held. Barely. But they held. I'm moving, Hawk. See you in 4 miles. She cut the transmission before he could argue. The next hour was the longest of her life. Every step was a negotiation with her body. A promise that this was the last step. Then one more, then just one more after that. Her vision kept narrowing, tunneling down to just the ground in front of her feet. The radio crackled periodically with Brennan's voice, but she didn't answer. Needed all her focus just to keep moving. At some point, she realized she was crying, tears cutting clean tracks through the dust on her face. Not from pain, not from fear, from something she couldn't name. Some emotion that didn't have words attached to it. Relief, maybe, or exhaustion so complete it bypassed thought and went straight to tears. She wiped her face, kept walking. 2 miles from extraction, she heard the helicopter. Not Brennan's stealth Blackhawk, something bigger, louder, coming from the west. She looked up, shaded her eyes, saw it. A regular military transport, unmarked but clearly American. It passed overhead, heading east, toward where the firefight had been. Kira's radio crackled. Different frequency. The one Brennan had told her was for emergencies only. A voice she didn't recognize. Deep, authoritative, not asking, demanding. Unidentified sniper, this is Colonel Richards' quick reaction force. Identify yourself immediately. Kira didn't respond, kept walking. Unidentified sniper, you are ordered to report to the LZ where Shadow Recon was extracted. We have questions about the engagement. Failure to comply will result in... She turned off the radio. Whatever Richards was going to threaten didn't matter. She had orders from Brennan. Stay dark, disappear, be a ghost. Ghosts don't answer questions. The extraction point was a valley between two ridges. Isolated. No strategic value. Exactly the kind of place you'd use for a pickup you didn't want anyone to see. Brennan's helicopter was already there, rotors turning slow, waiting. Kira half walked, half slid down the ridge. Her legs gave out at the bottom. She fell, couldn't get up. Just lay there in the sand, feeling the heat bake into her bones. The helicopter door opened. Brennan jumped out, ran toward her. He looked old in the harsh sunlight. Older than he had at Fort Bragg, lines on his face like cracks in stone. But his eyes were sharp, worried. He dropped to his knees beside her. Jesus, Kira, what did you do to yourself? Saved 8 people. Her voice came out as a whisper. Like you asked. I asked you to help them, not die trying. He was checking her shoulder, peeling back the soaked bandage. His face went tight. This needs stitches. Real medical attention. We need to get you to a hospital. No hospitals. They'll ask questions. Let them ask. You're a hero. You saved an entire team. Kira grabbed his wrist. Her grip was weak but determined. No one can know, sir. You said this operation never happened. That means I was never here. Promise me. Brennan looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. I promise. But we're still getting you patched up. The helicopter has a medic. He lifted her, carried her to the aircraft. She wanted to protest and to say she could walk, but her body had stopped listening to her mind. She just hung in his arms like a child, like the daughter he'd lost before she was ever born. The medic was young, maybe 25. He took one look at Kira's shoulder and started working. Antiseptic, stitches, bandages, professional, efficient. He didn't ask questions, didn't even ask her name. Just treated the wound like it was the only thing that mattered. Brennan sat across from her. The helicopter lifted, turned west, heading back toward Allied territory, toward safety. 8 for 8, Brennan said quietly. Shadow Recon is at a field hospital. All alive. 2 wounded but stable. The rest shaken but intact. They're calling it a miracle. Not a miracle, just geometry. Brennan almost smiled. They want to know who saved them. Colonel Richards is demanding answers. Says there's evidence of an additional combatant. Wants a full debrief. What did you tell him? Nothing yet, but I'll have to tell him something eventually. He's not going to let this go. Kira closed her eyes, felt the helicopter vibration through her back, felt the medic's hands working on her shoulder, felt herself drifting. Tell him whatever you need to, sir. Just keep my name out of it. Kira, please, Colonel, I don't want recognition. Don't want medals. Just want those 8 people to go home to their families. That's enough. When she opened her eyes again, they were landing. Fort Bragg. Night now. She'd lost hours somewhere. The medic said something about shock, about blood loss, about her body shutting down to preserve itself. Brennan helped her to a building she didn't recognize. Not medical, not barracks, something in between. A safe house, maybe. A place where people went when they needed to disappear. He put her in a bed, real bed, clean sheets, soft pillow, luxury after the Desert Storm. Sleep, he said. I'll handle everything else. The Iraqis are scattered, broken. That sector is quiet now. You broke them, Lieutenant, completely. Kira nodded. Let her eyes close. Let sleep take her down into darkness that was soft and warm and safe. She woke to voices, angry voices, coming from another room. Brennan's voice. My decision is final, General. Bradford's voice. Kira would recognize it anywhere. Your decision is court-martial material, Colonel. You sent an unauthorized combatant into a war zone. You risked an international incident. I saved 8 American lives. That's not a crime. That's my job. It's not your job to make decisions like this. We have protocols, chains of command, authorization procedures. And while we're following protocols, good soldiers die. Like my son died, like Shadow Recon almost died. A pause, then Bradford's voice quieter, dangerous. This is about Daniel, isn't it? You're still fighting Beirut. I'm fighting the bureaucracy that killed him. The same bureaucracy that would have killed Shadow Recon if I'd waited for authorization. Who did you send, Wyatt? Who was your ghost sniper? No one. There was no ghost sniper. Shadow Recon encountered scattered Iraqi resistance and fought their way out. That's the official report. That's a lie. We have evidence. Satellite footage, 26 enemy casualties. Precise, surgical. That's not scattered resistance. That's a professional shooter. Prove it. Another pause. Longer this time. Then Bradford's voice cold now. Final. 3 days, Colonel. You have 3 days to give me a name. After that, I'm launching a formal investigation. And when I find out who you sent, both of you will face consequences. Do you understand? Perfectly, sir. Footsteps, a door closing, silence. Kira sat up. The room spun. She waited for it to steady. Stood. Her legs held this time, stronger. The sleep had helped. So had whatever fluids the medic had given her. She found Brennan in the next room. He was sitting at a desk, head in his hands. He looked up when she entered. Looked old. Defeated. You heard. I heard he wants my name. I'm not giving it to him. Colonel, if you don't, he'll destroy you. Court-martial. Discharge. Prison, maybe. Brennan stood, squared his shoulders. Then that's what happens. I can live with prison. I can't live with betraying someone who trusted me, who risked everything to save 8 lives. Kira felt something break in her chest, not painful. The opposite, like a door opening, like light getting in. What if there was a way to satisfy Bradford without giving him my name? Brennan looked at her. I'm listening. 2 days later, Shadow Recon returned to Fort Bragg. They came off the transport looking like survivors. Bruised, bandaged, exhausted, but alive. All 8 of them. Corporal Hartwell was in a wheelchair. Her left leg was going to take months to heal. Maybe years. But the doctors said she'd keep it. The Tier 1 medical kit Kira had given them had made the difference. Had stopped infection before it could start. Private Mitchell was on crutches. Weak, but walking. The shrapnel wound had been worse than it looked, but he was young. He'd recover. Go home to his family. Live a life he shouldn't have lived. The rest of them looked shell-shocked, like people who'd seen their own deaths and been given a second chance they didn't fully understand. General Bradford was waiting for them. So was Colonel Richards. So were a dozen other officers and officials who wanted answers about what had happened in the Iraqi desert. They assembled in a briefing room, Shadow Recon on one side, officers on the other. Brennan stood in the corner, watching, waiting. Bradford spoke first. Staff Sergeant Kane, you and your team encountered extraordinary circumstances during your extraction. We need a full accounting of what happened. Garrett Kane stood, 34 years old, 12 years of service, a man who'd learned when to speak and when to stay silent. He looked tired, looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 days. Sir, we were pinned down by superior enemy forces. Approximately 200 hostiles. Limited ammunition, casualties. We activated emergency beacon and prepared for the worst. And then what happened? Kane hesitated just for a moment, just long enough for everyone in the room to lean forward. And then someone started shooting. Someone we couldn't see, couldn't identify. They engaged enemy forces from long range, neutralized command structure, disabled armor, eliminated threats with precision we've never witnessed before. Who was it? We don't know, sir. We never saw them, never heard from them. They just fought for us and then vanished when QRF arrived. Bradford's jaw tightened. You're telling me an unidentified combatant saved your entire team and you have no idea who they were? Yes, sir. That's exactly what I'm telling you. That's impossible. Sergeant Sterling stood. With respect, sir, we all witnessed it. Every member of Shadow Recon will give the same account. Someone saved us. We don't know who, don't know why. Just know that without them, we'd all be dead. Bradford looked at each member of Shadow Recon, one by one, looking for cracks in the story, looking for someone who'd break. Tell the truth. No one broke. They'd agreed on this, all 8 of them. Agreed that whoever had saved them deserved to stay anonymous if that's what they wanted. Agreed that some debts couldn't be repaid with exposure. Finally, Bradford turned to Brennan. Colonel, do you have anything to add to this account? No, sir. Shadow Recon encountered unexpected resistance and fought their way out with exceptional courage and skill. That's the story. That's all there is. Bradford stared at him. Long enough that the room started to feel smaller, warmer. Then he spoke. Voice cold. Final. This matter is closed. Shadow Recon performed admirably under impossible circumstances. They will be commended for their actions. As for the unidentified combatant, we will assume they were a member of Iraqi resistance or coalition special forces operating outside normal channels. No further investigation is warranted. He walked out. The other officers followed. Colonel Richards lingered, looked at Brennan with something that might have been respect or might have been suspicion. Then he left too. The room emptied. Just Shadow Recon and Brennan remained. Kane walked over, extended his hand. Brennan shook it. Thank you, sir. For whatever you did, whoever you sent, they gave us our lives back. I didn't do anything, Sergeant. Just coordinated QRF response. That's all. Kane smiled, small, knowing. Of course, sir, that's all. Shadow Recon filed out, leaving Brennan alone in the briefing room. He stood there for a moment. Then he looked toward the corner where Kira had been watching through a one-way mirror. She emerged, dressed in civilian clothes now, jeans, t-shirt, hair down. She looked different, younger, like a college student rather than a soldier. It's done, Brennan said. You're safe. Bradford can't touch you. No one can. You don't exist in any official record of what happened. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Thanks Shadow Recon. They protected you without even knowing who you are. That's loyalty you can't buy. Kira nodded, felt something warm in her chest, gratitude maybe, or belonging, or the knowledge that even ghosts could have allies. What happens now, she asked. Brennan pulled out an envelope, handed it to her. You have a choice. I can arrange for you to transfer, get you out of Fort Bragg, away from Bradford. You could continue serving, build a career somewhere else. Or you accept a position I've been authorized to offer, instructor, advanced sniper training. You'd teach the next generation everything you know, every skill, every technique, every lesson you learned in that desert. Kira thought about it, thought about 8 people who'd lived because of what her father had taught her, what Montana mountains and patient hours on shooting ranges had prepared her for. Thought about how many more people could live if she taught others the same skills. I'll teach, she said, on one condition. What's that? I teach everyone who qualifies. Not just men, not just people who look a certain way or fit a certain profile. Everyone who has the skill and the will. Brennan smiled, first real smile she'd seen from him. That's not a condition, Lieutenant. That's the whole point. 14 years passed. February 2005. Fort Bragg looked the same. Same buildings, same parade grounds, same shooting ranges where Kira had stood alone in the dark and tried to shoot away the pain of rejection. But everything else had changed. Kira stood in front of 24 graduates, men and women, different ages, different backgrounds. United by one thing, they'd all passed the hardest sniper training program in the U.S. military. Her program. She was Captain Kira Ashford now, 39 years old, Master Sergeant, Director of the Ashford Sniper Program. Over 14 years, she'd trained 230 shooters. Many had gone on to legendary careers, saves in Iraq, Afghanistan, classified operations she'd never hear about. But she'd know, she always knew when one of her students made a difference. Could feel it somehow, like an echo of that day in the desert when she'd learned what her skills were really for. Congratulations, she said to the graduates. Her voice carried across the room, strong, confident, the voice of someone who'd earned every word. You've completed training that breaks most people who attempt it. You've proven you have the skill, the discipline, the patience. What you do with those skills now is up to you. She paused, looked at each of them. My father once told me something I'll pass on to you. The quietest hunter brings home the most game. You're not here to be loud. You're not here to be famous. You're here to protect lives, to be the person others can rely on when everything else fails, to be the ghost that watches over those who can't watch over themselves. She saw nods, understanding. They got it. Remember that. Carry it with you. And when the time comes when someone needs you, don't hesitate. Don't doubt. Just do what you were trained to do. Be the quietest hunter. They filed past to receive their insignia. Each one stopped, shook her hand, thanked her. She accepted it with the same grace she'd learned from Brennan. Humble, quiet, letting them have their moment. After they left, she stood alone in the empty room, looked at the walls covered with photos, her students, their achievements, the lives they'd saved, the difference they'd made. This was her legacy. Not medals, not recognition. This, the knowledge that skills she'd learned from a Montana hunter had been passed on, multiplied, turned into something larger than herself. Impressive graduation. She turned. An old man stood in the doorway. 79 years old, white hair, face like weathered stone, but eyes still sharp, still gray as winter sky. Colonel Brennan, she smiled. I didn't know you were coming. Wouldn't miss it. You've built something remarkable here, Kira. Changed the whole culture of sniper training. I had a good teacher. Brennan walked into the room, moved slower than he had 14 years ago, but still moved with purpose, still carried himself like the soldier he'd always been. You saved 8 people that day, he said quietly. I've watched what those 8 people have done since. Kane trained 2 platoons. Sterling wrote the manual on urban combat tactics. Hartwell runs a trauma center at Walter Reed. Mitchell has 3 kids and coaches Little League. They're all living full lives, touching hundreds of other lives, all because you gave them a second chance. We gave them a second chance. No, you did. I just opened the door. You walked through it. He paused. And now you've trained 230 others, each of them saving lives, making differences, creating their own legacies. That's mathematics even I can appreciate. Kira felt her eyes sting. 14 years and Brennan could still do that. Still find the words that cut through everything else and landed right in her heart. Thank you, sir, for believing in me, for risking everything. I didn't risk anything. I made a bet on the best shooter I'd ever seen, on someone who understood that his skills are only meaningful when they're used to help others. Best bet I ever made. He pulled out an envelope, old, worn, like he'd been carrying it for years. I have something for you. Been waiting for the right time to give it to you. Kira took the envelope, opened it. Inside was a photograph, desert landscape, morning light, a figure on a ridge, small, distant, but unmistakable. Her, taken from a satellite during the operation. Below the photo, handwritten in Brennan's careful script, were words she recognized. Where others see only darkness, I see the path forward. How did you? I had access to satellite imagery, saved this one before it was classified. Thought you might want proof, evidence that it really happened, that you really made that difference. Kira stared at the photo, at the proof of a day that officially never existed, at the evidence of something she'd almost convinced herself was a dream. What should I do with it? That's up to you. Keep it. Burn it. Send it to Shadow Recon so they finally know who saved them. Your choice. Kira thought about it. About 8 people who met every year. Who kept a chair empty in memory of someone they'd never met. Who told their children about the ghost who'd saved their lives. I think I'll send it to them. They deserve to know. Brennan nodded. I think so too. That evening, Kira drove to Virginia, to a restaurant called Antonio's. Small place, family run, the kind of restaurant that had checkered tablecloths and bread so good you could smell it from the parking lot. Shadow Recon met here every year. Same date, February 16th, anniversary of the day they should have died but didn't. Kira had known about these meetings. Brennan had told her, had offered to arrange an introduction. She'd always said no, preferred to stay a ghost, preferred to let them have their story without complicating it with reality. But 14 years was a long time, and she was tired of being a ghost. She walked into the restaurant, saw them immediately, 8 people at a round table in the back, 9 chairs, 1 empty, a glass of water set in front of it. The empty chair was for her, for the person they'd never met but never forgot. Garrett Kane saw her first, 48 years old now, gray at his temples, but same eyes, same bearing. He stood, stared. It's you. His voice was quiet, certain. I don't know how I know, but it's you. The others turned, looked. Adeline Hartwell stood, 43 now, walking with a slight limp but walking, tears already forming in her eyes. Kira walked to the table, pulled out the envelope, set the photograph in front of them. They gathered around, looked at the image, read the words, understanding spreading across their faces like sunrise. You saved us, Kane said. That was you, all of it. I helped. You saved yourselves. No? Hartwell's voice was firm, absolute. You gave us a chance. Without you, we were dead, all of us. Colt Mitchell stood, 36 years old, healthy, whole, alive. I don't remember anything from that day. Was unconscious. But they told me someone threw themselves on a grenade to save me, and someone else saved all of us. He looked at Hartwell, at Kira. You're both heroes. Both deserve recognition. We don't need recognition, Kira said. We need to know that what we did mattered, that the people we saved went on to live full lives. We did, Sterling said quietly. All of us, because of you. Sergeant Donovan Sterling moved closer. 46 years in combat, and his hands were shaking. I watched you take out 3 tanks with a rifle. I've been telling that story for 14 years, and nobody believes me. Now I know why. Because it sounds impossible. Lance Corporal Emmett Hale, 42, now touched the photograph like it might dissolve. You saved my life 3 times that day. Once from a sniper, once from mortar fire, once from that last assault. I owe you everything. Specialist Levi Cross, 34, wiped his eyes. I was 20, scared out of my mind. First deployment, I heard your shots and thought God was answering prayers. Turns out I was right, just not the way I expected. Mitchell stepped forward toward her, looked at Kira with eyes that had seen too much death, too young. Corporal Hartwell told me what you did, how you kept fighting even after you were wounded, how you chose to save all of us instead of just getting out safe. He extended his hand. Thank you. For my life. For my daughter Grace, who exists because you gave me a future. One by one, they came forward, shook her hand, hugged her, welcomed her into a family that had been incomplete for 14 years. They invited her to sit. She did, in the chair that had been empty for 14 years. They ordered food, told stories, laughed, cried, connected in ways that only people who'd shared death and survival could connect. At one point, Kane raised his glass to the ghost who saved us, who turned out to be real, who gave us 14 years we shouldn't have had. To Captain Ashford, Hartwell added, to the quietest hunter. They drank. Kira felt something she hadn't felt in years. Belonging, family, the knowledge that she wasn't alone, had never been alone, had always been connected to these 8 people even when they didn't know she existed. Later, as the evening wound down, her phone rang. Brennan. Did you find them? He asked. I found them. And I'm home, sir. Finally home. She could hear the smile in his voice. Good, because home is where your family is. And you've got a big family now, Lieutenant. 8 people who love you, 230 students who respect you, and 1 old man who's proud of you. Thank you, Colonel, for everything. No, Kira, thank you for showing me that the right person in the right place at the right time can change everything. That's a lesson I needed to learn, one I'll carry with me. The call ended. Kira looked around the table, at 8 people who'd become her family, at the life she'd built from one decision to run toward danger instead of away from it. General Bradford had been wrong. The desert hadn't broken her. It had forged her into something stronger than any metal could signify. She'd become exactly what her father had taught her to be, the quietest hunter, the one who brought everyone home. They stayed at Antonio's until closing, made plans to meet again soon. Not in a year, sooner, because 14 years was too long to wait between family dinners. As Kira drove back to Fort Bragg under stars that looked the same as they had in Montana and Iraq, she thought about the path that had led her here. One impossible mission, 8 lives saved, 230 students trained, a legacy built not on glory but on quiet competence, in the willingness to act when action mattered most. Lieutenant Kira Ashford had saved 8 lives in 1991. Those 8 had touched hundreds more. Her students had saved thousands. The ripples kept spreading. That wasn't a ghost story, that was a legacy. Tomorrow she'd start training a new class. 26 students ready to learn what it meant to be the quietest hunter. She pulled into Fort Bragg, looked up at the sign over the training building. Ashford Sniper Program, excellence through precision. The work was never finished. There would always be more students to train, more lives to protect, more hunters to teach the skills her father had given her. The quietest hunter brings home the most game. Captain Kira Ashford had brought home 8 people, had taught 230 others to do the same. That was enough. That was everything.